5 years ago, a colleague directly attacked my scholarly integrity, setting in motion an almost 2-year battle with my university. I had no choice. I had to fight back. I won the case, but I also lost. I lost years of my professional life, faith in the institution, and my original desire for being a faculty member. Power functions in brutal particulars. It stretches time. I was forced to return, rehash, and relive the past in order to defend myself. My senses were overwhelmed. My body ached. I was angry, disappointed, and righteously indignant all at once. Battling a powerful institution cracked me open. It broke parts of me and changed me. The case that cracked me open was initiated by an older white man who blamed me, a younger but more senior Indian American woman professor, for his professional failures. During those years, I was completely disoriented. By design or inefficiency, I'm not sure. I wasn't told, for example, what the case was about for 2 months. I repeatedly requested information and got no response. Throughout the case, I was advised by well-meaning veteran colleagues that if I were to just share the facts, everything would work out. As a woman of color, I had my doubts about this strategy. But as a social scientist, I too wanted to believe the facts would carry the day. What I found was that the faculty members on the university committees immediately aligned themselves with my colleague. Committee members took up my former colleague's allegations and complaints about me as their own. They repeated his harmful mischaracterizations in their comments and raised doubts about my integrity and expertise. They reinforced retrograde patriarchal beliefs when they questioned my role as a woman working with a man. Had I been kind enough to the complainant? Did I make sure that my male colleague knew how to complete basic academic tasks? They seemed untroubled that these questions positioned me as a subservient caretaker and the complainant as a person who was not capable of completing the work of a scholar. When I named these patterns of questioning as potentially racist and sexist, I got no response. I hired an attorney. For every day of my 2-year battle, I was made to feel enraged, frustrated, and tired. I was always screaming on the phone as my young daughter witnessed me trying to get the university to do something about my case. I obsessively replayed my arguments with my husband, who worried with me about how this would affect my livelihood and our lives. I couldn't sleep, and when I did, I would often jump out of the bed to run from phantoms. I was exhausted, but I refused to be beaten and positioned as an unethical, uncaring, and incompetent scholar. I flooded the committees with evidence responding to each and every feeble allegation set before me by the complainant. I responded quickly and thoroughly with carefully worded arguments backed by email records, Google documents with time-stamped entries, data visualizations, and letters from eyewitnesses to back every one of my claims. I produced hundreds of pages to defend myself. I was effective in forcing the committees to give up on particular lines of questioning, but they would come up with new and almost laughable angles to pursue. They kept shifting the ground. They would throw something at me, and I would quickly respond using all the skills of research that, ironically, I was being accused of not having. They tried to find the smallest of mistakes in my responses, as if to suggest that if I were capable of making a tiny error, I was also guilty of destroying a man's entire career. My unwillingness to be cowed made the committees more determined to win. When they threatened to level stronger accusations against me, which would have significant consequences on my career, I realized that what had sprung from one man's bruised ego had turned into a battle between me and the university committees who seemed determined to take up his cause. The case's increasing absurdity clarified that this was not about any supposed misconduct in which I was purported to have engaged in. It was about me, a woman and a person of color, challenging institutional power and those who hold it. When the case finally emerged from the bowels of the university and reached the highest level of review, it was fully dismissed. The nearly 2-year battle was an enormous waste of my time. It was a distraction that kept me from my students and my scholarship, my friends and my family. One of the especially damaging outcomes of institutional violence is that we are made to feel afraid to talk about how we were abused. We fear retaliation. We are ashamed that we let something like this happen to us. We worry about our careers. For many women of color, these fears are just another layer added to persistent feelings of not belonging in the academy. Our fears do not, however, silence us. Word gets out about who has been harmed, who has done the harm, and its consequences. I'm often contacted by women at conferences and via social media who need a witness to their story, who want advice, or who are at the end of their rope. I'm happy to talk with these people, but we should not have to rely on a whisper network to protect ourselves. I share my story because I want other women and people of color to know that they are not alone. What happened to me should not be understood as a one-off experience, a terrible thing that happened to an unfortunate person. While I was fighting with my university, I knew of 2 other women who were also in the midst of their battles. Comparing my situation to theirs underscored that not everyone can hire an attorney, draw on the strengths of their community, or continue fighting while maintaining their job. I have the gift of education, if not hyper-education, from a PhD to a postdoc to the privilege of a tenure-track position. I have the luxury of speaking the language of the academy, and I have access to a robust social network and economic resources. We should not be required to have all of these resources to stand up for our dignity. The institutions where we earn our paychecks were not created for people from non-dominant backgrounds to thrive. The procedures that enliven many institutions of higher education have not historically served us well. And there are people in our institutions who are threatened that we are here. I share my story with the hope that it moves those of us in positions of power, and all of us have some, to speak up, to intervene, and to challenge institutional abuse that often cloaks itself as legitimate policy. It is on us to recognize and embody our ethical responsibilities to each other. We do not need individual actors to save the day. We do not need saviors. What we need is collective responsibility and institutional accountability to ensure that abusive processes do not undermine the true and radical possibilities of higher education.